7 minutes after 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. There's so many different things. As you get closer to lunch every day, do you do this, Robin? Do you say to yourself, "What am I going to eat today? What am I going to eat?"
I do.
I just walked into the mall and I walked past the food court. They're all starting to cook things in there. And I'm thinking, I should say the WOCA commissary.
That's right.
But it's like, oh gosh, maybe I'll have that for today. Maybe I'll have that today. And then you think, well, wait a minute. I do have a commitment to myself to eat healthier, right?
Yes.
Christopher Speed's going to help me with this, and everybody. He's a registered dietitian. He's on the phone. He's a nutritional scientist, a presenter on a variety of health-related issues. He researches working extensively with omega-3 fatty acids. Oh, I got to ask him about that. And vitamin K2. Don't know what that is. He's an associate editor of the European Journal of Cancer Prevention and serves as an adjunct lecturer at New York University's Nutrition School. Wow, he's all over the globe. He's going to talk to us about the missing link to heart health, 4 common bone nutrients that could add 10 years to your life by keeping your heart pumping stronger and longer. Christopher Speed. Good morning, Christopher.
Good morning.
Where are you?
I'm currently in Santa Cruz, California. I'm over here working, but I'm originally from. I live and work in Brooklyn, New York.
Oh, and you got that Brooklyn accent. I can hear it.
That's right. Yeah, via Sydney, Australia, 15 years ago.
Well, thank you for being on the air with us today. Yeah, I guess the first question I have for you is omega-3. I know. First of all, for the listeners, this isn't an infomercial. But omega-3 is mentioned a lot in infomercials, so I don't want to make anybody think that's what this is. But I see it on my mayonnaise jar. I see it on my egg carton. I see it on my dog food. Everybody's bragging that they have omega-3 in their products. Mm-hmm. This must be a good thing, right?
It is a very good thing if that omega-3 is what we call long-chain fatty acid omega-3s. And the 2 types of omega-3s that you can find on most of those products when you look at the nutrition panel is you'll see these letters. One of the letters is EPA, and the other letter is DHA. Those 2 omega-3s are the most researched nutrient of them all. And repeatedly, they've been shown to provide outstanding support against the development of chronic disease, such as heart disease. And now we're starting to actually view nutrition from the shoulders up. In other words, what does nutrition have and what's the impact of nutrition on the brain? And omega-3s have an outstanding positive effect on brain development, and as we age, a healthy brain in that instance as well.
So if I go to the health food store and I see omega-3 tablets, do I say, I don't need that because I got it in my mayonnaise, I got it in my eggs, and my dog has it in her dog food?
I would say that, yeah, I am a firm believer that we need to aggressively supplement ourselves with omega-3s in a supplemental form. That's
you do? Okay.
Yeah. For 2 reasons. We are quite simply all deficient in omega-3s because we don't eat fish every day. I mean, even the healthiest person I know doesn't eat fish every day. And the second reason why is we're also eating a lot of another type of fat called omega-6. Now, view omega-6 as the absolute antithesis of omega-3s. Everything that omega-3s do to support and reduce inflammation, literally in every cell in the body, omega-6s do the opposite. So because we're consuming so much omega-6, we need to be consuming high levels of omega-3 that's A, unachievable with really eating whole seafood, and B, it's a much more affordable if you can do it through these fish oil and concentrated omega-3 supplements.
Oh, okay.
And sometimes people think of heart disease as just heart disease and that it can be fixed with a stent or something like that, but they don't realize that also could lead to stroke. That word doesn't really come up a lot.
No, in the same way that you can have external peripheral blockages through atherosclerosis, you can have the same blockage in the blood flow to the brain, and stroke can definitely be an issue, and that's terrible. So it's what we do as aggressively now than what we do. And actually, in fact, this week a fascinating study was just released that actually really solidifies what nutrition does in how it affects our arteries, which are also forgotten, and that there are specific nutrients, one in particular, that if we add to our diet, in addition to, say, omega-3s, which are also important, we can achieve far greater arterial health by improving its flexibility.
Oh. How do you do that?
Yeah, there's something left out of that. It sounds like.
Yeah, no, and it's quite outstanding, and actually the nutrient that is really becoming very excited among nutritional experts is it's called MENA-Q7K2. Now, this vitamin K2, it's a very biologically active form, the MENA-Q7K2, really does need to be added to our diet because, like omega-3s, we don't consume enough of it. In fact, the only society that typically consumes enough of this is in the northern parts of Japan, and their lower levels of heart disease have been attributed to two things. One of the most important ones is the fact that they're eating a food called natto, which has a very high level of this MENA-Q7K2. Now, this is especially important when you're consuming a westernized diet and you're taking in calcium supplements for bone health. Because if you're just taking calcium by itself, what's probably going to happen is that calcium is being driven also into your arterial walls where it's reducing its flexibility. So this recent trial that was just released this week shows that actually if you can add this MENA-Q7K2 to your diet, and in this instance it has to be achieved through supplemental approaches, you can do as much as add 10 years to your life, because we do realize now that the stiffness of your arteries is intimately related to your immediate and long-term heart disease risk.
Oh, really? So let's see if I understand this. Calcium supplements or high count, whatever you do in milk or whatever, spinach, whatever has calcium in it. Mm-hmm. Most people do that for their bones, but you're saying that without the vitamin K, the calcium can cause problems for your arteries while it's helping your bones. Is that right?
Yeah. Still, some of that calcium is going to go to your bones because the bones will receive the calcium.
Right.
But there's also going to be some residual calcium that's also being driven. It's not being managed accordingly, and it's been also pushed into your arterial walls.
So that's bad.
It stiffens your arteries, and it also predisposes those regions of your arteries to develop an atherosclerotic plaque or some form of blockage, which isn't obviously a good thing. So, but by adding that MENA-Q7K2, which I was actually quite fascinated to see on, you can go to Walgreens, CVS, all the good supplement stores in this country, you're going to see MENA-Q7K2 on that calcium supplement bottle, let alone by itself. It would be a good thing for us to start taking it in light of this recent research that really suggests that adding it to your diet is an extremely good thing for not just your bone health, but probably more importantly, your heart health.
We have to take a little break. Christopher Speed is on the phone. If you have a question, by the way, during the course of this, feel free to call. The number is 622-9622. We'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. It'll be mostly cloudy today with a couple of showers, even a thunderstorm around it this morning. Highs will range from the mid and upper 60s in the northwest part of the zone to 74 along the coast. Mostly cloudy skies tonight with a couple of lingering showers along the coast. Lows ranging from 45 in the northwest part of the zone to the mid-50s along the coast. For tomorrow, variable cloudiness and breezy with a passing shower, highs in the mid and upper 60s. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm Joe Lundberg.
Career Source Citrus Levy Marion brings together business and community partners, economic development leaders, and educational providers to connect employers with qualified, skilled talent and job seekers with employment and career development opportunities. Tune in the first and third Wednesday of each month at 9:30 a.m. to Career Source Citrus Levy Marion and learn how they can help you.
That was the sound of a tree falling. It could be your tree. You're going to have it trimmed, but never got around to calling Pride Tree Service. It could have fallen in a field, and now all you have to do is call Pride Tree Service, and they'll have it quickly out of the way for a great price. But don't wait until the tree falls. It may not fall in the field. It may hit your car, your house, or worse. So call Pride Tree Service today and avoid all those headaches before they happen. Pride Tree Service, 840-0750. That's 840-0750.
All right, 16 minutes after 10 o'clock. We're speaking about our nutrition, and Christopher Speed is our go-to guy right now. He's out in California. He's a registered dietitian. We're talking about the missing link to heart health and some of the bone nutrients that could actually help your heart as long as I guess you have the right balance. Christopher, the one thing I've always thought, just my thinking on this, and I do a radio show, so obviously I haven't studied this like you have, but I've often thought that when we were designed, built by God or by nature, but whatever your belief is, that we were made so that if we if we ate the things we were supposed to eat, we would be okay as far as the nutrient. Everything would be balanced. Obviously, we don't eat the way we were made to eat anymore, but if we did, would that be true? Would we get the amount of K and the amount of calcium? Would we get all the right amount of everything?
Yeah, look, I think because we are a victim to westernized society where we eat too much, in the instance that we spoke about earlier, too much of that omega-6, therefore we need to eat much higher levels of 3. There is a need. The vast majority of nutrition, yes, you can get achieved from whole foods. And there really aren't that many supplemental individual nutrients that have actually been repeatedly shown and really taken through the mighty of scientific muster for us to actually suggest we need to take. There's actually not that many. We've already touched on MENA-Q7K2, amazing research that why we should include that, omega-3s, and there's really only maybe a handful of more supplements that have that really high level amount of research. But you're right. Theoretically, if we were back in a development of 1,000 years ago, our diet would have been very, very different. We wouldn't have eaten omega-6s. We wouldn't have had trans fats and overly refined carbohydrates. And as a result, we'd be eating basically whole foods, much higher protein-based eating. We'd also be more active because we'd be probably having a healthier body weight, and there'd be a lot of different things. But because that's simply not the case nowadays, we really do need to take heed of what the nutritional evidence is saying, and that's why there are a number of nutrients that it's maybe important for your listeners just to consider adding to their nutritional plan.
Okay. We do have some listeners calling in, so let's take some of those calls. By the way, if you want to call in, you're welcome to. The number is 622-9622. You'll be speaking to Christopher Speed. Good morning. Thank you for waiting. You're on the air now with Christopher Speed.
Good morning, Mr. Speed. There is so much information out there, and a lot of it is very conflicting, i.e. Senior citizens, and I'm one of them. We're told that we need calcium to maintain our bone density and everything else, but you can't just take calcium. You have to have calcium and magnesium, and you're supposed to also have something like vitamin D and, say, CoQ10. I know you mentioned the omega-3s and everything else, but it's to now where our doctors are starting to realize this, and my doctor said, well, you ought to be taking this CoQ10 and like that. And but I'm just wondering, how can how do we know what to do? You're saying calcium isn't always the greatest thing for you. And I believe that, except all of a sudden now we're told we need calcium for bone density, and we also have to take magnesium with it, otherwise the calcium isn't absorbed. I'll hang up and listen to your response because I can hardly hear you on the phone. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. It is very confusing. Listen, I'm a fully qualified dietitian, and I get confused when I walk around the stores and understand what's out there. So I really hear you. By no means am I saying you should stop taking your calcium supplement. But what I am saying is, in addition to the calcium supplement, make sure you take that other compound called MENA-Q7K2. Then the calcium you're taking is truly going to support your bone health and not hinder your heart health. I suggest that people take CoQ10 if they're taking a statin drug, and many people, especially the elderly, are on statin drugs. The reason being that drug directly depletes the body of its CoQ10. So if you're taking a pharmaceutical intervention that's been proven to reduce CoQ10, then I would definitely take it for that reason. Vitamin D is important. In fact, in most bone supplements, you're gonna find all the best ones will have MENA-Q7, K2, calcium, and vitamin D.
The one thing I need you to clarify, because if I'm confused, I'm guessing our listeners are also. We're saying vitamin K, right?
K2.
Or K2, and then you're also saying another word, MENA-Q or something. What is that?
Yeah, so the what you're going to see on a product, regardless of the brand, is it's going to say MENA-Q7K2.
How do you spell that? MENA.
MENA, the letter Q, and the number 7. Now, MenoQ7 is a type of vitamin K2. There's many different types of K2, and the research that I was alluding to was done on that type of vitamin K2.
I got you.
Yeah, so you'll see MenoQ7 K2 on the particular product. You're probably not going to necessarily see vitamin K2.
Okay.
Just for extra clarity, yes.
Okay. And I'm sure that our listeners were saying, what is he saying right there? And so I'm glad you spelled it MENA, and then the letter Q, and then the number 7. So MenoQ7. Okay, got it.
From time to time, we always hear how there are young people that are experiencing heart disease or stroke, or they even die from heart disease, as opposed to years ago when people were older, of over 60 years old. Why is that?
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to genetic predisposition as well. A lot of it we just simply don't know. I wish we could have all the answers. I think, though, that when you look at the absolute vast majority of people, instead of these little sort of anecdotal, isolated instances, you'll see very, very, very much that there's a very close correlation with nutritional intake, eating the right nutrients, supplementing the ones that we know we're not going to get from our whole foods because we don't want to eat it or we can't afford it, and so on, and actually having that much lower level of disease. The other thing, too, which I think is important about nutrition, is we're now starting to talk in definitives about how nutrition can also affect our brain chemistry, how we feel. And that, for instance, when you retire, if you've eaten so well up to your retirement year, until that day you pass, you're going to be not in and out of a hospital, but having a high-quality life with great wellness. And I think that's the other thing that we need to be starting to look at when it comes to eating well. It's not just reducing our risk of chronic disease, it's also making us feel really good and live a happy, great life with a great deal of
Sure, it makes sense. Is there a way that your doctor can give you a test, a blood test or something, that will indicate where you specifically stand? Like, wouldn't we all be different? It seems like that would be the case. Like, my chemistry would be different than Robin's, and hers would be different than the guy outside. And is there a test?
Yeah, well, coming back to this omega-3, omega-6 imbalance issue, which a lot of experts are now saying is the greatest predictor of heart disease, even more so than, say, looking at cholesterol, I would suggest that you would ask your doctor to add that to your next blood test. So get your blood pressure checked, get your triglycerides checked, cholesterol. It's all it's painting a picture of your risks. But what we're now realizing is how inflamed your body is at any one time, and most Americans are inflamed because we're eating too much 6, not enough 3. Well, if you can get a blood test, which is commonly available, then that blood test is going to really give you a more solid picture as to your overall heart health risk.
Does the stress contribute to vitamin deficiency in the human body?
Yes. When we get stressed, we produce a lot of cortisol. And cortisol definitely does have an effect on how we absorb certain nutrients, and so for sure, stress also makes you eat too much. It changes your behavior. So from a caloric intake standpoint, it can contribute to weight gain. It can contribute to overall poor health choices. I know people that are stressed that want to eat a lot of chocolate because it makes them feel better, and they might want to start drinking alcohol and in excess, because of stress-driven issues.
The website that I have for you, I just went to it, and it is foodandnutritionstrategies.com, correct?
That's correct.
And on there, you have a link for a home omega blood test. How does that work?
Yeah. So there are blood tests that are commonly available. That's just one of them. There's another one called the omega-3 index. More and more individuals now are using them in their practices. I do on a regular basis because I'm a firm believer that knowing your omega-3, 6 imbalance is a really key, important indicator of health. So yes, there are definitely a number of people now that are really starting to use it and actually really get behind that type of test for sure. In fact, it's now believed that it's probably going to become the next cholesterol test because we're now realizing that actually just checking cholesterol by itself isn't a real predictor of heart disease risk.
Once again, let me reintroduce our guest. Christopher Speed is on the phone out in California. You can tell from his accent that he's from Brooklyn. He's from Australia, but he lives in Brooklyn. I bet you're going to move out to California now that it must be really nice out there compared to what Brooklyn's going through right now, huh?
I went through an 83-degree change from when I left Brooklyn to when I got to San Francisco and Santa Cruz. I left what felt like minus 11, and I got to a 72-degree day. So it was crazy.
Oh my God! Do you have family back in Brooklyn?
I do. I have 2 kids and a wife back in Brooklyn. So yeah, well, I'm very much have family there.
So you're stuck there. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I mean, I'm originally from that area too, but
when you give talks and things, do you also talk to the doctors? Because when I went to my doctor for my checkup this past year, they said that I needed a calcium, so he prescribed calcium for me, but he didn't say about anything else about adding the MENA-Q7K2. So I think I'm going to take your advice and get that.
Yeah, no, I would definitely suggest you should. And let's face it, we put a lot of pressure on physicians. My wife is a physician. We put a lot of pressure on these people to know everything. They are not nutritional scientists. They are doctors of medicine, right? And that's what their expertise is. So one thing the gentleman made that I could sense he was frustrated and even kind of annoyed, because it is frustrating and annoying that we're getting all this information. If more people listen to registered dietitians about their food choices and what they could do to supplement or not supplement, we wouldn't have this confusion. Because unfortunately, the media runs with a lot of negative slants, media hype information that's on poor science. So if you seek out advice by qualified nutritionists and registered dietitians, they would have told you, instead of the physician that you just saw, that yes, take calcium, make sure there's vitamin D in there, and very importantly, make sure there's MENA-Q7K2 in there as well. So it's a really important thing. You know, doctors specialize in medicine, nutritional scientists and dietitians specialize in nutrition, and that's why they are the best at their specific specialties.
And for the listeners, I want you to, hopefully you've figured this out already, that Christopher hasn't one time told you a product that he sells.
Exactly.
If you go to his website, you don't see a product that he sells. He's not trying, but another misleading source of information are the infomercial people, because they want you to buy their vitamins, and you're telling us you go to Walgreens. I mean, you told us it was a couple different places to get all the same things. So because we're out of time, is the website I went to the best website for our listeners to go to? Food and Nutrition?
And because there was some confusion about the MENA-Q7, there is a website called vitamink2.org, and that will take you through exactly what we discussed. That is a very new a bit of science that maybe your listeners would want to go to. And then the registered dietitians have a website called eatright.org, and that's where you get a lot of information about where the registered dietitians are. Where you live.
Christopher Speed, thank you so much. We'll be right back.
Fox News Radio. I'm Chris Foster. Homeland Security funding expires tomorrow, and Republicans disagree on how to pay while still fighting the president's orders on immigration reform.
The Senate passed a bill that would fund the agency through September and avoid any kind of shutdown. But that proposal could face stiff Republican opposition in the House, where Speaker John